Hello dear friends, subscribers and viewers of the channel. Today is March 10th, 2026, and we are beginning our traditional detailed breakdown of the combat map. An enormous number of changes have accumulated along the entire line of contact. Important and contradictory news is coming in, which we will analyze in detail. But before diving into tactics, I would like to spend just a couple of minutes touching on the global agenda, the Iranian conflict, which is directly influencing world processes. Insider information is coming in. Trump's advisors are persistently urging him to find the fastest possible exit from the war with Iran. The political circle surrounding the US president is proposing to frame the end of the campaign as an unconditional achievement of all objectives. According to them, a prolonged conflict in the Middle East, against the backdrop of rapidly rising oil prices, could trigger a catastrophic reaction inside the United States itself. Ordinary Americans are already feeling it at the gas pump. At the same time, Trump himself is categorically unwilling to halt combat operations without a clear-cut victory, and is unpleasantly surprised that Iran is showing absolutely no willingness to make concessions under the military pressure of Washington and Israel. Yesterday, the US president called Vladimir Putin, asking the Russian leader to act as a mediator and persuade Iran to immediately cease fire. Apparently, Iranian missiles and drones are hitting American bases very hard. The Pentagon clearly did not anticipate such an asymmetric response. What do you think, dear viewers? Is a global deal possible in which Putin negotiates a ceasefire with Tehran, while Trump in return puts heavy pressure on Zelensky, forcing Kiev into peace talks and the transfer of 4 regions to Russian control? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. And now we move on to the map breakdown. We will begin today's review with the Costantinovka direction, from which an enormous volume of data has come in. There is both good news for the Russian side and not so good news. On the negative side, Russian units were forced to retreat from some of the positions they had captured in the southern part of Costantinovka. As you may recall, in February the forward assault detachments had reached as far as Heroiv-Pratsy Street. However, holding on in the built-up area proved critically difficult due to weak logistics and the dense fire control maintained by the Ukrainian armed forces. As a result, the decision was made to pull back approximately 500 meters to more convenient and protected positions. However, this local withdrawal is offset by successes on other flanks. Russian forces have advanced significantly in the area of Ilinivka. First, assault troops managed to take control of a strategically important section of abandoned S-75 surface-to-air missile battalion positions between Ilinivka and Dolha-Balka. Second, Russian forces successfully occupied the industrial zone in the western part of Ilinivka itself. This should help finish off the village's defenses, since the Russian armed forces now have the ability to assault Ilinivka simultaneously from the south and the west, enveloping the garrison in a pincer movement. In Costantinovka itself, there has also been a tangible success. While the southern Heroiv-Pratsy Street had to be abandoned, in the area of the railway tracks, assault groups took control of 8 streets at once, advancing all the way to a major road interchange. The pace of urban combat has increased manifold. The current work is the unglamorous task of shaping the front configuration for the final, large-scale assault on the city. The main obstacle to this plan remains 2 key villages, Stepanivka, which Russian forces still cannot finish off, and Dolha-Balka. Both sit on commanding heights. If Ukrainian formations can be dislodged from there, it will be possible to build a fully functioning western flank, which would allow the western part of Costantinovka to be assaulted safely. But for now, the Ukrainian armed forces have literally dug themselves into the ground. However, this stubbornness is costing them enormously. Losses from FAB glide bombs and artillery are colossal. FPV drone operators on both sides are working actively. Today, for example, in the north of Costantinovka, 5 kilometers from the active fighting, Russian operators tracked down and destroyed an abandoned Ukrainian armored vehicle. Moving slightly northward, a critically important success has been recorded on the Cramatorsk direction. The fighters of the South grouping finished off the last powerful Ukrainian army defensive stronghold, the settlement of Holubivka. On the road to Kramatorsk, the Ukrainian armed forces had constructed a massive fortified area anchored on Orikovo-Vasilivka, Minkivka, and Holubivka. Russian forces were bogged down here for nearly 3 years. Forward units had reached this line as far back as after the capture of Soledar in the winter of 2023. It was only in January that the front truly began to move. Oriciv-Vasilivka was taken. In February, Minkivka was finished off, and now Holubivka has fallen. Yesterday, the Russian Ministry of Defense officially announced its capture, and today confirmation of the clearance of the surrounding forests has emerged. Russian units will now apparently take up positions along the Siversky-Donets-Donbass Canal. Only 13 kilometers remain to Kramatorsk airport. The option of advancing westward on the move exists, but beyond the canal there are vast numbers of fortifications reinforced with concrete. Therefore, the Russian command may choose not to batter their head against the eastern gates of the city right now. Most likely, the army will consolidate along the canal while reserves are redirected, either northward to increase pressure on Rye-Oleksandrivka, with an eye toward reaching Mykolaiivka, or southward to deal with the defensive node west of Chasiv Yar, where Russian forces have been treading water for 8 months already. This is a critically important sector for collapsing the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses at Costantinovka. Ukrainian defenses are now visibly sagging, both near Sloviansk, where south grouping fighters are advancing in the forests, near Lipivka, Privilia, north of Pazino, and at Kriva Luka, and toward Kramatorsk. It is quite possible that this year we will see Russian forces reach the outskirts of both cities. Now let us move south to the Oriciv direction. Interesting video material has been posted online from the northern part of the settlement of Primorske. Fighters from Ukraine's main intelligence directorate conducted a bold clearing operation and managed to capture Russian soldiers in 2 different parts of the settlement. With high probability, Ukrainian forces are now firmly in control of the entire northern part of Primorske. As for Russian forces, if they do control the neighboring Vasilyanka, as the Russian Ministry of Defense has claimed, they clearly entered it from the south, from Stepnohirsk. No visual confirmation of full control over Vasilyanka has emerged. No flags, no clearing footage. Only the entry of forward groups into its southern outskirts has been verified. Despite the Russian MOD's reports of capturing Vasilyanka and Richny, the current picture tells a different story. The Ukrainian armed forces are not sitting on the defensive. They are counter-attacking, clearing the north of Primorske and pressing from the direction of Malokaterenivka as well. Although the 2 areas are separated by the Konka River, covert pontoon crossings are clearly in operation there. The front line here had stood solid for a long time due to the ferocious concentration of FPV drones on both sides. Any vehicle is burned on approach, and fighting proceeds with small infantry groups. In other news from this sector, reports indicate an expansion of Russian-controlled territory north of Stepnohirsk, in the vicinity of the settlement of Zapasne. From the Julipole sector, at the time of recording, there are numerous text reports coming in with no graphic changes to the map. Russian assault units are methodically pressing in the direction of Vozdvizhivka, expanding the grey zone from Pryluki. In parallel, an offensive is developing against Verkhnya Tersa from 3 vectors simultaneously, from Hirka, Starukrainka, and Tivitove. A classic semi-encirclement is forming. In the near term, we will inevitably see the start of direct assault operations. I will remind you that visual confirmations from this sector always come in with a delay. A repeat of the recent Rozdvianka situation is quite possible, when that settlement suddenly turned out to be under full Russian control without any prior footage. I will keep a close eye on developments. Moving on to the adjacent Dnipropetrovsk direction. Video material is available from here today. Attention is focused on the triangle formed by Stepov, Berezov, and Turnov. Russian forces had previously broken through to the southern outskirts of Turnov, expanding the bridgehead by 700 meters. Today reports are flooding in that Russian forces have already firmly established themselves in the central part of the settlement and are tearing apart the Ukrainian defenses on the flanks. The Ukrainian command is throwing in reserves, counter-attacking in the direction of Stepov and Berezov with massive drone support. No victory footage from the Ukrainian armed forces has emerged yet, but the intensity of fighting is extremely high. The line of contact is ablaze. From the vicinity of the long-suffering Novopavlovka, footage has arrived shot to the east of the settlement at Russian forward positions. War correspondents write, the forward position of Russian forces came under massive fire from the Ukrainian armed forces. Nevertheless, the units managed to expand their zone of control and captured new strongpoints on the approaches to the village. The situation at Novopavlovka has been a roller coaster. First came claims of its complete capture by Russia. Then footage emerged of a Ukrainian counterattack that recaptured 1.5 kilometers. Objective monitoring shows that the Ukrainian armed forces are still holding the northern and northeastern parts of Novopavlovka firmly. The zone is marked in yellow-red on the map. Russian forces are being forced to flow around the settlement from the east. We are awaiting fresh drone footage for final verification. Moving north along the map, the area of the villages of Modetska and Novopavlovka. Some pro-Russian sources are already coloring the center of Novopavlovka in red, claiming that the eastern half has already been cleared of Ukrainian forces and a bridgehead is being prepared for a push toward Mazhova. Simultaneously, there are reports of Russian successes near Novomykolaiv and Muravka, but not a single photo or video of this breakthrough is available in the public domain. On my map, these zones remain contested for now. Perhaps colleagues are getting ahead of themselves, or perhaps they have insider information. Let us examine the Pokovsk direction in detail, specifically the hotspot around Hryshine. A large volume of quality objective control material has been brought in here. It has been confirmed that a Russian forward position in farm buildings on the approaches to Hryshine came under intense Ukrainian fire. This means Russian forces made a lunge of 1 kilometer forward and firmly occupied the eastern outskirts of the settlement. All of this territory, which I am filling in red, has de facto passed under Russian control. On the southern flank, an expansion of the zone by 600 meters into the defense has also been confirmed. Recently, assault groups had broken through 1.5 kilometers in this area, but ended up in a fire trap. It has now been confirmed that the crisis was contained, and this tree line is firmly in Russian hands. Given the dynamics, this important logistics hub will fall completely within the next week or two. After that, the army will have open terrain for pressing on Shevchenko and advancing along the highway through Mirny, Vasilivka, Hulev, and Shailivka. On the Dorilia salient, the epicenter remains the territory of the Zaporizhzhia mine. Yes, the mine has been closed for a long time, but powerful concrete structures and slag heaps remain there, providing commanding fire positions over the surrounding area. Russian forces are conducting the most ferocious assaults in the industrial zone, obliterating Ukrainian positions with aerial bombs in the neighboring settlement of Belitska. War correspondents report that Russian infantry has entered the eastern outskirts of Belitska, but there are no confirmed facts. Previously, mobile groups had darted in there, but the Ukrainian armed forces quickly committed reserves and drove the Russians back beyond the built-up area. The front has stalled in positional attrition, but it could collapse suddenly. Counter-battery warfare and Russian aerospace forces strikes on Ukrainian rear positions in Dobropillia, Vilna, Kucherov Yar and Pavlivka continue without pause. The skies over the salient are teeming with kamikaze drones, dropping down to the Creminina direction. In the vicinity of Stavki and Lyman, text transmissions are coming in reporting successes. Russian forces are slowly grinding through the defenses in the eastern part of Lyman itself and in the surrounding forests. However, no visual evidence has been added in the past 24 hours. What has been officially acknowledged as Russian-held is a large section of forest, marked in red on the map, although physically they reached those lines considerably earlier. The biggest mystery right now is the status of Drobyshev. In Russian Ministry of Defense briefings, the capture of Yarova and Drobyshev was stated without qualification. With Yarova, there are no questions. Control has been verified by numerous pieces of footage. With Drobyshev, however, there is only video of the clearance of the northern forests. What is happening in the residential built-up area to the southwest of the settlement is completely unclear. I am waiting for the slightest video confirmation to solemnly color the map. Additionally, there are rumors of fighting in the forests near Sosnove and Oleksandrivka. Heading north, the Kupansk direction, the news here is being driven by foreign legionnaires. It has become known that during an unsuccessful sortie, a group of mercenaries from Brazil fighting for the Ukrainian armed forces was captured by Russian paratroopers. Several individuals were eliminated in combat. As for frontline movement, there is complete stagnation here. Activity has been reduced to large-scale artillery duels and counter-battery warfare near Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi. Russian aerospace forces are methodically leveling Ukrainian positions in Vuzlov, Petropavlovka, and on the eastern bank of Kupiansk. The map here has not changed for several weeks. The situation around Vovchansk in Kharkiv Oblast is similar. I have not touched the map since yesterday. Russian forces have wedged themselves into the built-up area of Vovchansky Khutori, and classic meat-grinding combat is underway for every destroyed building. Intense fighting is not subsiding in the area of Vilcha, Hravska, and Simonivka. The Russian vector of pressure on Verkhnya Pisarivka is maintained, but no shifts in the line of contact have been recorded at the time of recording. On the Liptsi direction, the same story, a dead-set positional war. And finally, the Sumy direction. A daily flood of victorious reports pours in from here with not a single frame of footage. Reports speak of an expansion of Russian-controlled territory in the forests near Hrabovska and Pokrovka. The grey zone to the west of Popivka has expanded significantly. Yesterday, I colored it red on the basis of video material. Now, assault detachments are trying to push through the dense forests further. Along the Yunakivka, Andriivka, Oleksiivka sector, the front has frozen like granite. Reports of advances are published every day, but in reality the line has not moved for several months. The last offensive attempt was by the Ukrainian armed forces toward Oleksiivka, Andriivka and Varachini, but the attack bogged down. Russian FPV drones created hell, burning entire columns of vehicles. Russian defenses held, but the Russians themselves are not launching any large-scale offensive here either, limiting themselves to special reconnaissance group operations in the direction of Mala Korchakovka and Krapovshchina. The borderline is unchanged, but the density of artillery fire and guided aerial bomb strikes here is absolutely off the charts. On that note, we will conclude today's breakdown. The situation at the front remains extremely tense, and the geopolitical backdrop grows hotter by the day. Enormous gratitude to each and every one of you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your detailed comments. It helps the promotion of our format enormously. Until we meet again on air, take care of yourselves.